First, we'll take a look at global energy commodities as always. Well, all the major grades, Brent crude and WTI, as well as natural gas, ended the week on a positive note. Brent kept high above the $80 per barrel mark, mostly on continuing and escalating tensions in the Middle East, airstrikes between Israel and Hamas, and some skirmishes and disruptions actually in Lebanon. So prices there stayed pretty buoyant, up by 14 basis points. WTI crude was up by 130 basis points. Natural gas up as well by 1.7%, but RBOB, that's gasoline down mildly by 0.31%. Let's take a look at Nigerian equities markets, or European equities actually we'll start with. We usually start with Nigerian equities, but European equities will do. All the indices were up positive with the exception of Spain, the IBEX 35. Basically, corporate earnings pretty buoyant amongst the major industry stocks there as well. And markets essentially in this first quarter of the year, bullish around key macroeconomic indicators, including inflation and interest rates. Let's look at what's happening in other stock markets around the world. On the NGX, well, investors clearly shrugging off figures that came out during the week from the Nigeria Bureau of Statistics, saying that inflation has gone up by 29.9%. In fact, food inflation was up by about 35%. So the all-share index on the NGX ending the week up by 1.56%. A fair amount of deal volume and values there, but values at 8.04 billion naira. And of course, stock market capitalization almost now heading towards the 60 trillion naira mark, ending the week at 57.84 trillion naira. Let's take a look at Wall Street. Well, Wall Street, a mixed picture. Dow Jones Industrial Index, not too much of a bad run to the end of the week, down by 0.01%, but S&P index up by 0.08%, and NASDAQ also down by 0.05%. Now to my top picks of the week. The first story here is that Michael Jackson's estate, the late pop singer's estate, is selling a stake in his estate to Sony, the big music and entertainment giant. The value of his estate is said to be worth about 1.2 billion, or at least this music catalog, which includes big hits like Bad and Beat It, is being sold to Sony to the tune of around $1.2 billion. Interestingly, Michael Jackson had bought, when he was alive, a stake in the Sony ATV, a big giant music publication merger there, and Sony had taken over a portion of that as well some years ago. Well, what this highlights pretty much that the legend is still seen as a big icon. Of course, he died 14 years ago in 2009 at the age of 50. So good news there for the estate of Michael Jackson. Nigeria is looking at possibly setting up a commodities board. If you may recall, if you're old enough to remember, commodities boards were abolished in the 1980s. But due to the lingering food crisis and shortages in the country, the Vice President, Kashim Shettima in Nigeria, said the government is mulling the possibility of bringing food boards and marketing boards back to life. And part of the strategic aim there is to shore up strategic stocks of food reserves. Now, the government, through the FCCPC, the Federal Consumer Protection Commission, is also looking to clamp down at retailers and traders that are perceived or alleged to be hoarding food. And I know the commission did make a move against one retailer in Abuja that was said to be doing that. So food boards may be coming back, commodity boards may be coming back into the market. And of course, this is a very timely discussion, given the figure we saw out on inflation, particularly food inflation, which the NBS says is now up to 35%. In America, Nvidia has become the third most valuable company in the world after realizing a market capitalization of $1.8 trillion. So it is trailing only Alphabet and Amazon, and is now the third most valuable company in the stock market. Of course, the big players like Microsoft and Apple and Saudi are still ahead of Nvidia, but Nvidia is one of the world's most prolific producers of semiconductor chips, and those are a key input, if not the main input, in many of the generative AI technologies. And of course, with the AI boom, the company is realizing a lot of gains on that. Its stock price was up to $740 per share. So good news there for Nvidia, as it now ranks in the top top 3 most valuable companies on the stock exchange in the US. Now, OpenAI has introduced a new generative AI tool called Sora, which essentially allows you to generate realistic videos by text prompts. And I saw a demo of these, really, really interesting. However, OpenAI has said that it's only going to limit the launch of that for now to a few creatives. There are concerns in the creative world around what this might mean for creative rights, copyright, and so on. And there are a few other companies who've explored this technology. But what this highlights is that OpenAI continues to advance in a significant way, and it'll be interesting to see how the Sora technology evolves in the coming months. And then finally, good news for the Kenyan shilling, which soared to a 15-year high on the news that the government had successfully issued a $1.5 billion Eurobond. Now, the aim of this bond is to part refinance another $2 billion bond that's maturing this June. Now, markets were a bit concerned around the government's ability to repay this other $2 billion bond, but the government was able to raise an additional $1.5 billion bond, which will be maturing in 2031 to part refinance its obligation, which is coming due in June. So clearly investors bullish about the country. Kenya is following both Cote d'Ivoire and Benin, who have successfully raised Eurobonds on international markets this year. That might signal a big return to international credit markets for other sub-Saharan African economies. And that's it on my top picks this week.